we all need love. We all need understanding. We all need a sense of safety and well-being.
Pretty much once you become aware of anything, it just starts to change whether you want to or not.
We're going to have all these different choices of things that we can do to improve our well-being, but that can also be super overwhelming as well.
It's not going to happen overnight. It took you a while to get to this state. It's going to take you a while to get out.
The biggest piece for most people to take is like, what works for you? What is the least amount of output that you can get for the greatest amount of input?
Once it's gotten you and you've lived in it for so long, even when there's no external pressures, it's just like you're literally your own boss, and probably no other external boss would be even remotely as harsh as you've probably ended up being. Are you ready to live a life with enough time, money, and energy? Have relationships and connections that delight you? Are you ready for the extraordinary life you know you've been missing? If so, then this is the place for you. I'm a best-selling author, coach, consultant, and speaker who's worked in technology for over 2 decades. I'm a leader at transforming people and organizations from operating in fear, obligation, and guilt to running off joy, ease, and love. It's time for Engineering Emotions and Energy with me, Justin Wink, Ph.D. All right, good to have you here today on the show. I got a great guest. So we're just going to kind of see where it goes because her name is Sal Holden. She's a kinesiologist, an intuitive life coach, a #1 best-selling author on Amazon, and she's also a speaker. For the last 14 years, she has personally empowered thousands of women internationally to overcome burnout, reclaim their health, energy, and joy, and create a life they love. Her latest book is called Thrive: Overcome Burnout and Reclaim Your Energy and Passion for Life. Welcome to the show, Sal. How you doing?
Thank you so much for having me here, Justin. It's an absolute pleasure.
And you're joining us from Australia, I believe, right?
Absolutely, yes, just above Sydney, right on the beach. So yeah, feeling very blessed.
Yeah, and so Sal and I, we actually both share the same publisher, Inspirational Book Writers, based in Australia, and so that's kind of where we met and got connected was through doing some was it one of the recent book writing. I'm blanking. I must have blocked it out, but was
Containers,
it?
yep.
Yeah. So welcome to the show. 14 years helping. It sounds like women. No men have snuck in there.
It's surprising. All my marketing is directed to women, and I've had countless like male clients over the years as well. I think, particularly if they're a little bit sensitive and are just really looking to unpack their emotions and do that in a safe way. I've had so many men reach out to me over the years as well. So definitely do work with men for sure.
Oh, cool. All right. I would like to. That's great because yeah, I was reading through most of your book, and I'm like, oh, this is I'm relating to so much of your story and a lot of the things that you say and write about, and there's a lot of amazing things to help with burnout or maybe that time of depression or whatever. So I'm glad that if one of our male listeners is listening and just connects and is like, oh my gosh, but I'm not a woman. Oh no. And sometimes I feel like that. I'm
That's
like, this person's amazing, but they're not for me because I don't have the right stuff.
No, it's definitely I'm not exclusive in that way in any way, shape, or form. And it's interesting. I think particularly conversations with my partner over the years, I've really got to understand that there's really not there's obviously differences between male and women, but we all need love, we all need understanding, we all need a sense of safety and well-being. And there's yeah, it's really not so different after all. And I think that's been a big learning for myself as well as a woman, thinking, no, men and different, men and women are completely different. Obviously, there's definitely differences though.
Yeah. Like there was, some info that was specific for, if I was menstruating, and I was like, okay, that,
Probably doesn't apply there.
yeah, it's like, okay, that one, I'm just gonna go like, okay, if I need that for somebody else, like, good to know.
Pass that
Yeah.
on. Yep.
So how has it been, publishing, releasing, going to this, as I know, because I've done something similar with my book. There's a lot of stuff that it takes to get a book launched and, get your numbers and all these things and get it out to
Mm.
people. How's it been to do all that and still stick to your message, or has it been a challenge, or what have you found in that?
Yeah, it's such a pertinent question because it's definitely been at the front of my mind the entire way of going, how ironic. I do not want to end up going through burnout, writing a book on burnout as well. So, and as you and I both know, writing a book and putting it out in the world stretches us in so many ways, particularly in the nervous system and in the capacity that we have as well. And it was really interesting. I was reflecting on my journey at the end of July because that was when I did my last in-person event for the Thrive book. And I thought, oh my goodness, I've actually released and published two books within 12 months or within, it was actually 10 months. And I was really feeling into that and just going, oh my goodness, that's actually a lot. So really leaning into a lot of the principles. And as you and I both know, there's lots of times to review, to read through the book. And I think even there was a couple of times where I was going through an exercise that I have in there, which is the red flags and green flags. And the red flags are kind of noticing things or behaviors or feelings that could come up when we're actually not doing so well. And I remember at one particular point just going, oh, okay, I need to really listen to my red flags here and really apply a lot more of my green flags, which is the things that help me stay on track and come back to myself. So self-care has absolutely been a priority. I've rested, napped when I needed to, getting to bed super early. I also have an aura ring as well, which I totally love. That always lets me know where I'm at because the tendency has been definitely to override that in the past. And so I think that that's definitely supported and helped in that process as well. But it's also really important to me to be working with, that level of integrity and walking our talk and really stepping into that for ourselves as well as, we bring our book out into the world. So it's definitely been a very mindful journey, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that's just kind of naturally part of when we, grow and stretch ourselves, is it's like, we kind of get checked as like, yeah, can you kind of maintain or not get too far out of your alignment, out of your integrity as you expand and go for more. I always kind of imagine a tree growing where, it's like at some point it sprouts a branch and it starts to go a little off to one side a little bit. But if it's paying attention, it then sprouts a new branch and comes back and, ends up being a straight up tree. Yeah, I was kind of sharing, right before that, I was practicing your principle of, getting rest when the body needs it, because I was really intending to finish the book, but I felt after I had a chiropractor appointment, and I've just my body was so tired after the alignment that I'm like, I really need to nap, and so I was like, all right, let me practice the principle and not burn my
We were
because
celebrating that.
I really wanted to be such a good podcast host. I really wanted to be such a good host and have read the entire book. But I got one thing that was I found kind of very interesting was you kind of did a little experimenting on yourself with a continuous glucose monitor, and I was kind of curious. I don't know, any other fun nuggets that maybe didn't make it into the book? Is that something like you might recommend to certain people, or was that like you're glad you did it, but maybe it's like there's a reason why most people don't do that kind of thing very often?
Honestly, I would do it again and again. I think there is so much information to be gleaned from things like that. And it's also one of the reasons why, like, I also use the tracking ring or anything else that really helps me to ascertain what's really working for me or what effects are my daily choices actually having on my physiology and my well-being. And the more research I've certainly done, like around blood glucose monitoring, or just even like our blood sugar levels and how much that actually impacts our health and well-being and insulin resistance and everything. And I think more than ever, there's so much prevalence of that in our society with diabetes and many of the bigger diseases that a lot of people can face in their lifetime really come back to those lifestyle choices. And for me, it just made it apparently clear. Like when you immediately see your blood sugar spiking, crazy after you've eaten something, it really is like such a I don't know, it's such a really pivotal reminder in that moment of just like, oh, this is actually not serving me. And particularly when you feel the physiological effects. So I would, like, as soon as my blood sugar would start to spike, I would start to feel physically fatigued as more insulin came into my body. And then the drop of the blood sugar as soon as that insulin, and I'd just be like, oh my God, I'd just feel white. And so I really started to correlate cause and effect, if that makes sense. And I would
Hmm.
really recommend it to anybody that is, health conscious and wants to improve just these little factors in their life. It really does make such a huge difference. And the staggering thing, which I, of course, wrote about in the book, was the effect that what happened to my blood sugar during the day impacted significantly my blood sugar overnight time. And it was actually the adrenaline that my body was using to bump up my blood sugar because it would get so low overnight time. It was like well and truly in that red zone to bump it back up. And the more I stabilized the blood sugar during the day, the more stable it just became overnight, and really gave me a better quality sleep as well. So yeah, I highly recommend to anybody that likes doing experiments or likes to figure things out for themselves, definitely to have a look at that for sure.
Very cool. Yeah, because awareness is pretty much once you become aware of anything, it just starts to change whether you want to or not. And this sounds like another
Yeah.
great tool in becoming more aware of our human system and what our actions, how it impacts us.
Mm.
Feeling overwhelmed by the daily grind? Imagine if you could pause, reset, and truly connect with a calmer, more fulfilled you. It's not just a dream, it's absolutely possible. Hi, I'm Justin, and I invite you to discover the life-changing techniques in my book, Engineered to Love. Right now, I'm offering a free chapter complete with guided audios that have already helped so many people find peace amidst the chaos. These aren't just any techniques. They're transformative practices designed to help you love yourself and engage deeply with the present moment without even having to close your eyes to the world around you. So join us at engineeredtolove.com/sample and access your free guided session. It's time to bust the busyness and embrace the joy, ease, and love in your everyday life. Don't wait. Start your journey to a more relaxed and recharged you today, because you deserve to live a life you love. Visit engineeredtolove.com/sample. See you there.
Absolutely. And I didn't even eat anything that I thought was significantly bad. It was like there was a store-bought protein ball, which I thought would be okay. It spiked my blood sugar massively. There
Uh-huh.
was like a
Well, because
can of tuna, like,
uh-huh.
yeah, with a tomato, it had tomato and onion sauce in it. Again, it was probably, I didn't actually check the label, but thinking, oh yeah,
Probably
that's
had a lot
like
of sugar in it too. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And it went off the charts for that one as well. And it was just like, wow, yeah, this is interesting. And I'd always thought having protein with sugar would help to, and maybe it still does. I didn't actually do the experiment of just having pure sugar by itself to see what it did.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it was interesting with, yeah, all of the, what impacted it and what didn't, which obviously leads to greater conscious choices then. Mm.
Yeah. And I don't know what the laws and the rules in Australia are, but here in the US, they're allowed to play this game of if it's not enough to be something like over 5 calories or 10 calories, they can just kind of like pretend it doesn't matter. So sometimes you'll see something and it'll be like, well, this has no sugar on it. But then you're like looking at the label, you're like, why are there 5 sugar-like things? And it's because each one is an amount to be less than whatever that threshold is. And so
Wow.
then yeah, yeah. So it's you got to read got to read the ingredients, at least here in the US. So I don't know. In different countries, they definitely have different laws and um, yeah, but
Yeah.
it's tricky.
Oh, absolutely. And again, like your body's the best feedback for those sorts of things as well, because yeah.
Oh yeah, the body catches it all. And it sounds like one of the cool things you got to realize is that I think especially with the marketing of so much stuff is it's like we're kind of expected that everything is instant. It's like, well, it's gonna spike the blood sugar or this won't. It either is or it isn't. But really the body, a lot of stuff it takes some time. So that realizing that something you did in the morning has an impact at night, and then
Mm,
also whatever we're doing over the course of 2 weeks kind of has an impact on, it's like whatever I've been doing the last 2 weeks is impacting me today.
mm.
Um, which when we're changing habits and lifestyle, I think you kind of talk about that and getting over burnout. It's like it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take you. It took you a while to get to this state. It's going to take you a while to get out. And I'm wondering, have you found working with your clients, is that one of the more challenging things that they face is just the sustaining the change and how to get going or
Absolutely.
what's, yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of the time, like the biggest challenge, I have so many women come to me and say, I know what I should be doing, I just can't implement it. And often that is because they're generally highly driven women that are trying to do it all. And so they kind of apply the same process to their healing. Like, I've got to be doing it all, otherwise I'm failing, which makes it really tricky to obviously sustain that. So it is one of the major principles that I talk about, that less is actually more, particularly when we're starting to heal burnout. But really coming back to um, finding what works for you specifically. And I think that's really important, because we can look at all of these different things, and lots of different modalities are super helpful, and breath work and grounding and cold plunges are a little bit too intense for healing burnout, but they can be great lifestyle choices and things. But we can have all these different choices of like things that we can do to improve our well-being, but that can also be super overwhelming as well. So
Oh
I think
yeah.
the biggest piece for most people to take is like, what works for you? What is the least amount of output that you can get for the greatest amount of input, in terms of like creating change? Because that's really what is sustainable when we think about like anything in life. If we're putting more out than what we're actually putting back in, it's not going to be sustainable long term. So we need to think about our health and well-being, I think, in a very similar way as well. So but definitely it's not a quick fix. It does take quite a period of time, and there's so many variable factors. As I spoke about in the book, like, I didn't have a backstop for my work. I was self-employed. My kids were relying on me financially. I was relying on me financially. I didn't have employees. I didn't have anybody else that could step in or take over. So it was kind of, and whereas for some people, if they've been maybe long-term in a job, they can take long service leave or something like that, or take a few months off, or they've got somebody else that was supporting them financially. There's so many different varying factors that can contribute to the length of time that it takes to come out of burnout. But the interesting thing, and I think this may resonate for you, possibly, Justin, is the moment I started to get energy back, I went straight back into the old patterns. And that was where it was like, oh my God, here I am again. Like, it was really a case of actually learning my capacity and limits, because it's like, oh, great, I've got energy. Right, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and would go straight back into overwhelming myself with far too much again. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, I think it's that just the habit of being busy is the most
Mm,
insidious that is once it's gotten you and you've lived in it for so long, even when there's no external pressures, it's just like, it's like you're your own, you're literally your own boss. And, probably no other external boss would be even remotely as harsh as you've probably ended up being. And I know I do like the same thing where it's like, I don't even work at a tech job. I have my own business. And it's like, I had the realization, like, I don't know, 5 months ago when it'd already been 4 months away, where I'm just like, I'm rushing from one thing to the other. And I'm like, I'm not meeting anybody. Why am I in such a rush? I don't have anywhere to be at any particular time. Like, what
mm,
the, and I'm like, oh, this is just a way of being.
mm.
And so I think to then not get upset at ourselves for feeling like we failed is like a huge, that because then that's just worse on top of worse. It's like, oh, you messed it up, you messed it up, you got busy again. You're so awful, and it's like, oh, I better work harder to be less busy. It's like, no, that's
Absolutely. And I think that's where like really understanding the root causes of like a lot of that dysregulation came in at a very, very young age. And basically like our brains have been trained to be in that busy state, and or, we were rewarded for being successful or for achieving, or punished for or having love withdrawn at the very least. So all of these factors like are so deeply embedded in our system, and that's where it is like can be a frustratingly slow unraveling of kind of winding these pieces back, or just paying attention, like when I'm breathing fast, or when I'm rushing a meal, even, like hurrying to move on to the next thing, and just gradually inserting more pauses to come back into that present moment, because otherwise it is our mind obviously racing And that's what's really hard also with burnout is because the lower in our physical energy that we are, the louder that inner critic, the louder our survival mind gets in, you know, oh my gosh, what about this? What about this? Like all the fears, the worries, and what could hurt it and what could harm us really kick in at another level that I was even shocked with, like when I was experiencing it.
Yeah, it's pretty
Mm,
startling. And yeah, I'd be kind of curious what I think you kind of mentioned some of the things that have worked, but I know for me, because I almost can't even be aware of my feelings or my thoughts. It's almost like sometimes I try to just track my behaviors where it's like, wait,
mm,
I'm having pizza way too often. I'm not doing this or I'm doing this too much. And it's like, uh-oh, something's up and maybe I need to reach out for help.
mm.
And I think that's a big thing is like having help, having other people. So it's like we're not burdening it all on ourselves. Um,
Totally. And we've all got those blind spots, right? Like it's like if
yeah.
it's always been what we've always done, like how do we become more conscious or more awake or more aware? And that's what is where those pauses can be helpful. But I'm the same. Like I notice one of my biggest things, and I talk about that in that red flags, green flags exercise is when I drink more coffee. That's my cue. If I haven't caught it before then, if that makes sense. It's like if I'm
Yeah.
and I may not necessarily be drinking more coffee, but if I'm craving more coffee, that is a really, really big sign for me personally. So
Oh wow.
yeah.
So even if you're able to track the craving. Okay. Yeah. Because I was about to ask you like, well,
Yeah.
how much coffee do you get up to when you're like, okay, now it's out of the because I've mostly been coffee's been one of my big things ever since I started working professionally. It was how am I gonna actually wake up at 8 a.m. instead of the student life of 10 a.m. or whatever it is. And it's like, oh, coffee. You give coffee and so it'd be like, I'm trying to think of how it was a lot. It was probably I'm trying to put it in. It's a liter, maybe a liter, at least a liter of
Yeah,
coffee.
yeah,
A lot,
yeah.
a lot. But that's
Which would
great that
be
you.
like roughly 4 cups, which I think like a lot of people would probably be having on a daily basis, like 4, even 5 cups. I've had people come to me with 8 or even 16 cups in a day, and it's like, oh my goodness. Like for me, three. Like if I have more than two, my preference is just to have one. Sometimes I'll lean into two, but three. Like if I'm going for the third, that for me is a really big red flag of just like let's wind it back, let's bring it back. Um, all of those pieces can be helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know one of the things that you mentioned that really helps kind of getting these new behaviors going, and it's taken me a while, but I've been getting better and better. But it's celebrating the small wins. Like even the smallest thing of just like, oh, I like even just recognizing like, oh, I'm craving coffee and just recognizing it. Maybe you even still then get the coffee, but just like took a beat and I noticed that I had the craving and it's probably not the best. Yes, yes. Um,
Absolutely. It's the conscious awareness. And when we celebrate that, that's a hit of dopamine, which again is helpful for the brain to be like, oh, that worked or that was good. Like, let's do that again. But also reinforces the I guess the awareness of what's coming through there. Mm.
yeah, because it's like the dopamine is part of how we got trained to how we've been, and it's going to be part of how we train to be how we actually want to be. And so the good thing about having been trained is that it can be retrained, and we just have to decide how we want to train ourselves. Because yeah, like you said, like a lot of this was done when we were much younger, and then a lot of it continues because a lot of this training is very beneficial for a lot of businesses and other things.
Mm.
It's um, because honestly, it's like for the most part, really healthy living doesn't require spending a lot of money. It's kind of what I found.
Generally, it's simplifying a lot of things, absolutely. And whilst there can be obviously more expensive things that people can invest in, like for health and things like that, but generally, when we strip it back to basics and simplify I totally agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's like when you kind of zoom out and look at it holistically, like can kind of seem like, oh, but this fast food, well, even though fast food in the U.S. is now super expensive, but it used to be, it's like, oh, I get a hamburger and French fries and a sugary soda for like $3. Like what do you? I don't have, but it's like, what's the cost of that in terms of your energy and then your health and It's like
Mm.
really, it's like that $3 thing was really, really expensive. Whereas it's like, because I even noticed when I started eating grass-fed beef, I'm like, oh, I don't need to eat as much. I'm so much more satisfied from
Oh, that's interesting.
half the amount because it's got a
Mm.
lot more nutritional density than
Yeah.
whatever the grain fed. Where I don't know. Sometimes I've heard they sometimes just throw candy at at livestock. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, whatever. As long as they get fat, who cares what they're eating? Um,
Yeah, yeah. And obviously, that has a huge impact like on our omega-3s and inflammation and everything else as well, because the grain-fed are so much higher in omega-6s, which the body still needs, but it's the ratios that really make a huge difference as well. Mm.
yeah. So I'm curious, how did you celebrate your book launch? Did you do anything a little bit bigger or?
I had two in-person events, which was really lovely. So one was in Wagga, which is my hometown where I grew up
Mhm.
lived there pretty much for majority of my life. And then I actually wasn't going to do another one. And then I had some friends in the new area, which is Newcastle, just above Sydney, which is where I live now. And they were like, no, we have to have an event. So yeah, we had a beautiful get together and just celebrated the book. And my partner, it was also my birthday, literally a week after the book launched online. So yeah, we went out for tea and we had this beautiful like seafood smorgasbord, and yeah, it was just amazing. And it was like protein on steroids. Well, hopefully not on steroids, but it was like so much protein. It was a
Lots and
very
lots of
filling.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and there was a cocktail in there as well. I normally don't drink alcohol at all, but it was a fun occasion, and just really taking that time to really celebrate and feel into that. And I think sometimes too, like just even afterwards, or just really acknowledging to ourselves of, oh my goodness, yeah, I did the thing. Or I think that that's a really
Mhm.
important piece for everyone, like because we can gloss over those bigger and smaller. And that's why I'm a huge advocate of like acknowledge the small wins, because if we're not acknowledging the small wins of how we've stepped forward or how we've created change, often we will just literally gloss over the big things. And then a lot of the things that we're actually doing in life, I feel like lose a lot of purpose and meaning, and we're no longer emotionally fueled by what we're actually doing or how we're living in life as well. So I think it's an important piece.
Oh yeah, and what the thing is like when the big things happen, they don't really give us as much juice as we would expect. It's relatively, it's a little bit bigger, but it really doesn't last all that long. It's pretty quick where it wears off, and it's like, well, what's the next thing? And so if it's like we aren't doing the little things along the way, it does start to be like, well, what the hell was the point of all that? At least I've had that, and I know that's kind of a common thing. And then it's like, well, but it's because you didn't do it good enough. You better go even bigger next time. That'll do it. Yeah, this just wasn't good enough. And it's like, no, it's not true. It's all about the journey because there really is no end. Like it really is just about having one experience after the other. And so if you're not enjoying bouncing along, it's going to be a really long life.
Totally. And I think it's so much more about who we become through that process or through that journey as well. And certainly that's what I've seen, like in terms of like being able to sustain change as well. It's very much about the identity of who we're becoming within that, as opposed to I'm just going to do this thing until I solve this problem or until I lose the weight or until I make the money. And then it's like, then I don't have to worry about it. When we do that, we end up in that yo-yo process of like, either doing the thing and then not doing it, like falling in and out of that threshold of pain and needing to change and needing to focus and then letting it all go again. So I think where we can really embrace, that becoming so much more and really celebrate that, I feel like there's a deeper sense of happiness and I guess happiness and fulfillment, satisfaction that come from that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's much longer lasting than the thing. Because you're right. Like it's like, oh yeah, it's done now. Okay, righto. What's next?
Yeah. And like sometimes I wonder if like one of the reasons people do get so into sports stuff is it's a culturally acceptable way to celebrate stuff more often. If your team wins or does the good thing, which I think is like the unfortunate part, is that it's putting it outside of your control this ability to celebrate stuff, but at least it's one thing. So I would recommend people take that level and put it to, things like, oh my gosh, I finished Sal's book. Like, yes, yes. I'd love to see like somebody go crazy like that on an airplane instead of just because some sports ball thing happened on the on the TV.
Totally. I have a funny story to share with you because this is like I was so clear that that celebration was so important, and this was years and years ago. When I was going through a particularly hard time in my life, I'd missed a couple of like really big goals that I was really wanting to achieve, and was feeling pretty low on myself. And I got up and I started washing the dishes, and so like every single knife, every single fork, every single spoon, like everything that I washed, I did a fist pump afterwards. By the end of washing the dishes, I was like high as a kite. I was like, oh my God, I feel amazing. And I think I share it. It sounds dumb, but it's also like it gave me so much emotional fuel that day and really helped me then tackle the bigger things of where I wanted to go or what I wanted to do. And I think the biggest takeaway for people from that is we really do have so much ability to be able to influence how we're actually feeling each day just through that simple process of celebrating ourselves or celebrating others or like gratitude. There's so many different ways, and I think when we do feel so low emotionally, it can feel like so much effort to try and create that shift or change or move in that different way as well.
Yeah, I'd imagine probably that first knife or fork you cleaned to do that celebration, it probably felt like it took like all that you had in you to even muster like, yeah, that was good. But then I'm sure by the end you were just like, yes, I did all the dishes. I did all the dishes. Because it really is kind of like it really is similar to like weightlifting. I think like, we have like emotional muscles and they've most of us they've gotten out of whack where it's like we've all did bicep curls of feeling bad and not good enough and depressed and anxious, and it's like you got to do the leg day of celebrating and gratitude, and that's what's going to really get all the good juicy yummy stuff and get you down the road and all that stuff. Like, yeah, I love that. That's a great story.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and I totally agree. And it is definitely, I've certainly known through, my life and my life experiences, whatever we're practicing. And I often say I am who I practice to be because it's that habitual response on a daily basis. And it's not about denying our feelings. I think our feelings are really pertinent and important to listen to and acknowledge and feel and accept and all of those pieces, and to still be focusing on where it is ultimately that we want to be going or what we want to be experiencing emotionally as well, because it just becomes such habitual, certainly for myself. I've noticed that,
Hmm.
the direction that I'm facing in, whether it's towards what I don't want or towards what I do want, it becomes so habitually ingrained, where, that's impacting how I feel every single day, what I'm focusing on, what I'm feeling, therefore what's going on in my body, with, the chemical responses to stress and or joy. And again, that's where tracking my stats, my sleep stats, what I've noticed is two different things was either when I had a really big cry and just like really
Hmm.
just released everything, my stats went through the roof and my heart rate variability went up like in a really good way, and my heart rate came down. Or if I was really in that flow of gratitude, that was also where I noticed like amazing sleep stats came from that. Yeah.
Wow, that's yeah, and both those things you mentioned, they are free. You had to pay for the Aura rig to get the data, but anyone can just cry, and just anyone can practice gratitude. Like you don't have, yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Mm.
Um, yeah. Any last things you want to chat about or make sure we don't miss? I'll definitely be telling people the details of how to get the book here before we wrap up. But it's been great. It's been great talking and a lot of fun. And I did enjoy what I read in the book so far, and I'm excited to kind of like poke into the other sections I didn't quite get to because I wanted to take care of myself and take a nap.
Totally.
Which I would not have done probably even a year ago. So I'm like, yes, yes, look at me taking care of myself. This is fantastic. So
Love that.
yeah.
Totally. I think the biggest thing that I've certainly noticed and known over the years or experienced over the years is definitely, what we're saying about ourselves, like our level of self-love is one of the most important factors that's going to impact everything in our life. And for that, like I love Byron Katie's work of questioning our beliefs and thoughts, because it can just create so much more freedom. And our biggest fear as human beings of feeling that we're not enough really can like massively impact how we're feeling physically every single day. And I think the more that we can start to shift that and come back to living from that place of love, rather than our survival mind telling us all the ways that we're not good enough and not perfect enough and need to do better or need to do more and all of those pieces, I think that gives us a level of freedom that really just changes so much for ourselves as well. And I'm still a work in progress. It's not a one-time certificate that once we've challenged that belief or thought, it's gone forever. It pops up in different ways and different forms. But having the tools or the strategies to be able to return back to, a sense of well-being, a sense of wholeness within, I think is one of the most powerful gifts that we can give ourselves, and the flow and effect that then that has for our children, for our families, for our communities, for anybody that we're interacting with during the day as well. So that's
Ah,
one of the biggest pieces I feel is super important. So
I love that, especially kind of the last part of, working on you, that is helping out everyone else in your life and in your community and in the world. Like it's, um, yeah, yeah. And 'cause I think so many times we think like, oh, there's all these other people that need all these things. Like who am I to have troubles and problems? And it's like you're a human. You're a human. And when you take care of that, then other people won't have to take care of you. And then you're also being an example. And then you're just likely going to be more enjoyable and more present, more attuned, and a better leader and teacher and all these other good things. So like, yeah, I love that. Thanks so much for being on, Sal. It was really good to get to chat with you. And the book is called Thrive, Overcome Burnout and Reclaim Your Energy and Passion for Life. You can find it, any Amazon in the world, I believe. And then you can also find Sal at her link tree at /Sal Holden. So I'll make sure that's going to be in the description of the show. Um, and yeah, and I don't know if Sal's going to have any more upcoming in-person events or whatever. So if you're in Australia, or maybe that's a good reason to go visit Australia, is you go do an
totally.
event with Sal, and you do that event, and you go get boxed up by a kangaroo or whatever. Yeah, the wildlife is incredible there. So
It is.
yeah, with that, thank you so much, Sal. Take care and good day, everybody.
Thanks so much, Justin.
Thanks for tuning in to Engineering Emotions and Energy with Justin Wink, Ph.D. Today's episode resonated with you? Please subscribe and leave a 5-star review. Your feedback not only supports the show, but also helps others find us and start their journey of emotional and energetic mastery. You can also help by sharing this podcast with someone you think will love it just as much as you do. Together, we're engineering more amazing lives.